girlfriend knows when people are about to die. I don't know what to do in my situation. If any of you have heard anything similar to what we're going through, please tell me. I'm a 17-year-old high school student. I'd say I'm pretty average. I mostly spend my time with friends or playing baseball for the high school team, though if they were any better, I'd probably be one of the first players to get cut. Earlier this year, I walked into school and saw a new girl reading a book in my homeroom. I live in a small town located an hour's drive from Indianapolis, so a new girl, especially one as cute as this one, was sure to draw my attention. I walked up to her and stuck out my hand. "You must be new," I said. "I'm Matt. Nice to meet you." She nearly jumped a foot out of her chair, keeping her eyes glued to the floor. I was surprised at her reaction. It's not like I'd snuck up on her. "I'm Julia," she said, her voice quavering. She was a small girl, short and petite, with brown hair that hung low over her face. "Nice to meet you, Julia," I said. I wasn't sure where to go from there. She was pretty clearly uncomfortable talking with me. "Well, if you need anything, feel free to ask." Over the next few weeks, I kept making conversation with her. She slowly grew more relaxed, and I even caught sight of her watching me a few times. After a few weeks, I saw her at one of the school baseball games. I'd played well in my position in right field, catching a fly ball that helped cement our victory. After the game was over, I ran out into the small crowd that had gathered. "Julia," I called out. I couldn't see her over the crowd leaving the small baseball stands, so I climbed the bleachers to search for her. I saw a small brown head standing still in the throng, standing on tiptoes while looking for me. We made eye contact and I yelled, "Want to grab some ice cream?" She looked around self-consciously, then gave a small smile and nodded. I grinned and pointed out at the parking lot. "Let's meet up by my car." I changed out of my clothes and met her there. The two of us headed for the strip mall in town that served frozen yogurt. Julia seemed more comfortable than I'd ever seen her before, and pretty soon I had her laughing at my terrible dad jokes. We took a walk outside to finish our dessert, and I took the initiative to grab her hand. She seemed a little surprised, but didn't pull away. Then she gasped and jumped back. She was staring at a couple that had left a clothing store in front of us, pure horror on her face. She shielded her eyes, turning away, leaning over. I knelt down next to her, putting my hand on her back. She was shaking. Then the sound of tires squealing and a terrible crunching sound broke the night silence. I turned around and saw that a car had hit the woman who'd left the store. I won't go into detail, but believe me when I say it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. The peal of the ambulance siren, the broken bones, and the screams of her husband are all almost too terrible for me to think about. But Julia had screamed and turned away before the accident, before they'd reached the curb, before I'd even heard the car approaching. I turned to stare at her in shock. "Julia, what did?" I said. She turned to look up at me, anguish written on her pale face. She grabbed my hand and led me into the clothing store. We walked to a deserted aisle. "Julia, did you know? How did you know that would happen?" "Will you believe me?" she asked. Tears had swollen her eyes, but they were still hard and suspicious. I looked back out at the ambulance through the shop's windows and made a decision. "Yeah," I said. She stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed my hand. We left the shop, walking into the next one. She searched the store, shook her head, then led me into a new store. This repeated 3 more times before she paused in a sporting goods store. She nodded toward an old man sitting on a bench. "See him?" she asked. The man looked to be in his late 60s and was heavily overweight. "Yeah," I said. "He's probably got another 6 months before he dies," she said. I turned to her in shock. "How do you know?" I asked. "Are you sure you want to know?" she said. "I can show you, if you want." It was almost too much, but my curiosity was overwhelming. I nodded. held down," she said. I paused, then did what she'd asked. She covered my eyes with her hands. Look at him again through the cracks of my fingers. I did, and through the hazy light, I saw a black figure hovering above his head. It was vaguely humanoid, but black mist swirled around it with long, white teeth. Its fingers were reaching down towards the man. Pure malice emanated from the figure. The image was too gruesome and terrible for me to keep watching. I jerked away, taking a few steps from Julia, then turned to look back at the man. He was giving me a strange look, but the figure was gone. "How many did you see?" she asked. I worked my jaw wordlessly. "1. Normally that means you've got 6 months. The closer you are to dying, the more appear." I pulled her away down an aisle, whispering, "How many did she have? That woman from an hour ago?" Julia swallowed. 5. We headed back to my car, talking about it. Apparently, she's been seeing them ever since she was a kid. I drove without thinking up to an overlook that I know. As Julia told me more, she began to sob. "Have you ever tried saving someone?" I asked. She nodded, the tears flowing. "It only works if they would have died from unnatural causes like accidents, and even then it's almost impossible to predict what will happen. And I can't just go around following strangers." She turned away, rubbing her eyes. "I could have saved that woman tonight, though, if I'd just been less of a coward." Julia took a deep, shuddering breath. "That's why we moved here from Chicago," she said. "So I wouldn't see so many people. I had to see those things every single day." Tears flowed down her face, and a feeling of protectiveness swept over me. "I'm glad you told me," I said. "We'll get rid of this thing somehow. It's got to have some explanation, right? I'll help you, I promise." She shot a look towards me, the sobs returning even harder. "That's the thing, Matt," she said, looking above me. "When I first met you, you already had one above your head. Now there's 2. I don't know what to do. If anyone here has experience with this, please let me know. And if I find anything else out, I'll update you here." Thank you for listening and delving into the dark with me. I would be so grateful if you please click the thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment. The more engagement this video gets, the more YouTube will push my content to others, and thus our twisted little community will grow. All stories read on this channel will be available on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and many other podcast apps. Links are in the description. Thank you again for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you.